Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Annos from Wounds of Recollection to the podcast. Wounds of Recollection is a one-man black metal, blackgaze project that I discovered when I first started getting into black metal. I downloaded Crashing Waves of Heaven and have been a fan ever since. We talk about breaking away from a religious upbringing, growth and change as a musician, secretly creating music, and more. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you want more info about the podcast or any specific episode, you can join the As the Story Grows mailing list over on Substack. The podcast is also on Discord and Patreon. Links are in the show notes. Come hang out. Enjoy getting to know Wounds of Recollection.
Never done an interview like with my voice before, so this is the first time people have heard my voice, so it might be interesting.
Oh yeah. You are you in Atlanta proper? Or are you in the suburbs?
I am definitely in the suburbs. I've lived my whole life in the greater Atlanta area. Never lived in this Atlanta city limits, but I've lived in so many places around Atlanta that just claiming Atlanta is the easiest thing to do.
You grew up in the Atlanta area your whole life. What was growing up like?
Growing up in Atlanta, I grew up in a Southern Methodist family where I grew up going to church every day, sort of a conservative, suburban, but also kind of country household. And, I guess I had a pretty good childhood, all things considered.
Yeah.
I guess I grew up listening to country music, which I guess I eventually sort of grew out of a little bit, but I still enjoy some country music. And, I grew up in a middle class family. I get along great with both my parents. I guess all things considered, like I said, things could have been a lot worse for me. So I'm pretty grateful for the upbringing that I had. Nice.
That's awesome. Church every day. That's a lot.
Sorry. Church every week. I should.
Sure. That twice a week, Wednesday, Sunday.
Yep, exactly.
Again. Been there. What era of country music are you talking about when you're in the country?
Oh man. I guess if you want to go all the way back to my youngest years, when my dad chose all the music I listened to, I'm talking Ricky Skaggs, the real deep South bluegrass type of thing.
All right.
Nowadays, I don't listen to a whole lot of country, but I enjoy Tyler Childers. Recently, I've gotten into Zach Bryan. He just had an album released yesterday as of this recording.
Nice.
So just a little bit of country here and there, but obviously things like rock and metal and emo are my life now.
Yeah. I when I was real young, it was the height of the Garth Brooks era, when he was Top of the Moon, and that was my jam at 7 years old.
Yep, same.
Good times. What was that transition then into metal, rock, emo?
So, but I'll have to just say this before I start answering that question. When you first reached out to me and I was looking through your catalog to see if it was something I wanted to say yes to, I saw you had interviews with bands like Killswitch Engage, The Plot, and You, Dayseeker, and to me that was just so cool.
That's awesome.
So I guess basically what I was trying to say is I sort of listened to some of those podcasts and I sort of got in my head what kind of answers I would have to give for this show. So
Okay.
I've already had time to think about it.
You're well prepped.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, like I said, I grew up when I was a toddler. My dad chose the music I listened to. It was mostly country, and then I guess growing up a kid in the early 2000s, the easiest way I accessed music was just like YouTube. So being 7, 8 years old, listening to like 3 Days Grace, Linkin Park, Rise Against, that kind of stuff on YouTube was how I first discovered rock music. And I can't even describe how I found it. It just kind of happened naturally, just being a suburban kid in the early 2000s, I guess. Linkin Park finds you.
Yeah.
And my introduction to metal actually was the game Guitar Hero 3. So I'm 24 years old. I was born in 99. So when Guitar Hero 3, I was like 7 or 8 years old at that point. Wow. And so of course, I was excited about it. I got it for like Christmas or whatever. And it had already had bands I liked on there, like Rise Against and things like that. The thing that introduced me to metal was there was a Slipknot song on there, Before I Forget. And so I remember hearing that song at like 7 years old and then just immediately being enamored by like how loud and like how high the energy was. Mm-hmm. And so of course my way of finding music was going onto YouTube. So I immediately searched Slipknot on YouTube at the age of 7 or 8 or however old I was. Definitely too young to be listening to Slipknot. And I remember finding like, so this was about 2007. So it was before All Hope Is Gone came out. I remember finding The Nameless by Slipknot, and I remember listening to it for the first time and being absolutely terrified of how loud and how much I was being screamed at. I think if I remember correctly, I just basically just panicked and closed out of the YouTube tab because I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is scary. And then I just kind of sat on it for a few days and I was like, you know what? I kind of liked being scared listening to music like that. Yeah. And so I went back to YouTube, searched for Slipknot, and then, at way too young of an age to be listening to like the first 2 Slipknot albums, I just deep dived on them, and like songs like Wait and Bleed, Disaster Piece, just being an 8-year-old, just banging my head out to stuff I was way too young to be listening to.
Wow. And then it's just a downward spiral from there into more extreme styles of music.
Pretty much. I remember discovering Cattle Decapitation of all bands when I was like 11 years old. And like, to me, they were like the craziest band to have ever existed. And I thought I was like, a big, tough adult listening to death metal at 11 years old when, it was just, that's how I discovered extreme music. And then from there, just broadening my horizons and into black metal and doom metal, all that kind of stuff.
Nice. At what point did you start learning to play an instrument?
So I first got my first acoustic guitar when I was 10 years old. My dad bought it for me. And I actually kind of hated the process of learning how to play an instrument. So I put it down for a few years. And then for my 13th birthday, I got an Ibanez electric. And I started to actually enjoy it. My problem at the time was that I tried to learn songs that were way too complicated for me. Like, I remember trying to learn Slayer's Raining Blood after having played guitar for like a month and just being like so frustrated I couldn't do it. But I just kept at it. It was just one of my only main hobbies in my teenage years, and here we are 10 years later.
Nice. What was the scene like? I mean, you were close to Atlanta, but what was the scene like for you as a teenager, like into heavy music? Like, were you going into the city a lot for shows, or was there something like local in the community?
For me, there wasn't really much I could do besides just appreciate metal from a distance on the internet. Okay. And like I said, I grew up in like a Southern Methodist conservative country music household where the idea of taking their 13-year-old to like a Slipknot or a Slayer show would have been like blasphemy. So I mostly just kind of quietly enjoyed it to myself. And then once I turned 18 years old and I could go to shows of my own, I just kind of went on my own, really.
You never got into like the Christian metal scene inside of things?
Yeah, that's funny. I just listened to the Landon Tours interview you did before this, and heard you guys talking about Christian metal. So there was a few bands like I think Skillet, and like there's another Christian like early 2000s rock band called Red.
Yeah,
That
right,
like my dad took me to see those bands when I was like, I don't know, 14, 15 years old. And so that kind of thing I could do, but like the bands that I wanted to see, any local bands, that was kind of out of the question until I was 18.
At what point did you start writing your own music and trying to form bands?
Pretty much immediately after I learned guitar. I guess when I started Wounds of Recollection, I've mentioned this before in a different interview, but I actually started it to be like an old school death metal band, like a Deicide, Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse. The name Wounds of Recollection actually comes from a Deicide song called Scars of the Crucifix.
Okay.
It was just a name that I picked because I thought it sounded cool. It was from a Deicide song, which is the kind of music I wanted to make. But at the time, I'd only played music for like 6 months. So obviously, I was not talented enough to play technical death metal riffs. And so I eventually just sort of shifted into doom metal, thinking that it'd be easier to just play things slowly. And that's sort of how Wounds of Recollection started. And aside from that, I would just make music as a teenager around, like, just for myself. I wasn't releasing it, just making, just these crappy post-hardcore songs and then putting them on my MP3 player and only listening to it myself and not putting it anywhere. But yeah.
Was it always just this one-man solo project because you like couldn't find other people to play with, or was it just like easier to just like, was this just like your bedroom thing you did?
It was 100% the bedroom thing that I did, like just wanting to create on my own, not wanting to find people nearby me. No one in my high school really wanted to listen to like death metal or black metal, and that's the kind of music I wanted to make. I do want to give a shout out real quick to a post-hardcore band I recently started. It's the first time I ever actually made music in real life with another person. It's called Noise, Nois, period. We just put out an album actually like 2 weeks ago called Formal Affairs, and I'm really proud of it. It's sort of Every Time I Die meets Norma Jean with some My Chemical Romance influences. Very different from the black metal stuff I make by myself. But just want to give a shout out to that because it's my first time ever making music with another person.
Nice. That's cool. What led you from, death metal into doom? What led you to black metal? Is it kind of like, I don't know, I hate to say like, not a lack of talent, but there's a low barrier with black metal where it's like,
right.
It can kind of sound like it was made in a bedroom because like production on like people is like, if the production's too good on black metal, then like you're a fucking sellout, right?
Yeah, right. I think that was probably a good selling point for me when I was a teenager. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Really, to me, I guess what got me into black metal in the first place was once I'd sort of gone down the rabbit hole of how heavy music could be. When I was 11, 12 years old, listening to Cattle Decapitation, like I felt like I sort of reached the point of, okay, music can't really get much heavier, at least to me. I'm sure there are underground scenes that I'm not familiar with that are much heavier, but it got to a point where I wanted to hear things that were more heavy, but had emotion, atmosphere, that sort of thing. And I think I discovered all the same bands everyone discovers: Mayhem, Emperor, all those kind of second wave bands. And I heard that heaviness with that atmospheric, emotional side, and I think it really resonated with me. Nice.
Talk to me about your progression, both as a lyricist and a songwriter. Like you've written all the songs, but from Frozen Corpses on the Mountainside to You Were Never Loved. That's quite a transition in how you approach writing. Like, how has that transition and evolution been?
I think really it's just a matter of growing up and realizing what's important to me. Like the first 5 Wounds albums, and I get messages from people saying they still enjoy them, but they're kind of discardable. They're very clearly just a teenager in their bedroom just messing around with like Audacity. I think like the first 2 albums I recorded using like a drumming app on my phone and recording into like a karaoke microphone. So very clearly it was just, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just experimenting, trying to figure it out. And the lyrics of like the first 5 albums just kind of came from, borrowing ideas from other black metal bands, Winter and Death and Graveyards, that kind of thing. And then by the time I was sort of an adult and I had spent several years teaching myself how to write and produce, it was like, okay, now it's time to make things that are important to me and make personal music and things like that.
Because you're just this solo artist on releasing your music independently on Bandcamp, it allows you to be like, proficient, just like put stuff out and always have your name out there. Have you ever thought about like the nature of just like singles, right? You did Garden of Empyrean Light instrumental. Like, how has your thought on music and releasing music changed over the years?
Honestly, it hasn't changed much. My whole goal with all of my projects is just to make things that I enjoy making and things that I would want to listen to. And then I've put every album I've ever released online or on Bandcamp for free downloads. And I don't really have much of a like an idea of, I need to release albums or I need to release singles or EPs. I just kind of go with wherever my heart's at the moment. If I want to do like a 2-track EP like I did back in May of this year, I think it came out. Yeah, May. Yeah. I just kind of just go with it, and then if it clicks with people, then it clicks, and if it doesn't, that's all right too. I make it just for the fun of it. Of all, I guess.
You also have another project called Isleptonthemoon.
Correct.
What differentiates the two projects? Both are kind of in this black metal, post-black metal atmospheric space.
This is a good question, actually. I think the thing that differentiates them the most is how much perfectionism goes into them. I Isleptonthemoon basically as a response to how much pressure I put on myself to make Wounds of Recollection like this highly produced, poetic, like really, I guess I was trying to make like high art, if that makes any sense, but I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to constantly make these like technically and produced and well-written albums. And I was like, I just want to make music that's fun. I'm not going to put too much effort or thought into poeticism or production. And so Isleptonthemoon was just like a project just to sort of have fun with and experiment and not put pressure on myself. And I dropped it for about 5 years after 2017 for no reason other than I just wasn't really having fun making it. Like I would try to come back to it and I was like, yeah, like I'm putting too much pressure on myself again. And that wasn't the original vision. And then just last year, I don't know what changed. I decided to just pick it up again and just start making something without putting pressure on myself, and it worked out.
You put out 2 records this year, the EP And then in February, you released The Warm Glow of the End of Everything. Talk to me about that record. I mean, it's a bedroom project, so it's like you've not been affected by the pandemic or anything, but talk to me about the process of A Warm Glow at the End of Everything.
So I started writing that one before the album before it, called Deathbed, even came out. I think Deathbed, the one before it, was very dark. It was very personal. It dealt with the topic of Alzheimer's and dementia, which is a very niche subject matter that, you know, it was important to me at the time, but it wasn't expressing everything that I wanted to do with my music and my art. And so I started writing it just sort of with the idea of like the fear of the future, but also sort of embracing the future. And then it sort of worked out at the time where I was just about to graduate college. Okay. And so much of the lyrics of that album deal with sort of, you know, I spent a lot of years feeling sort of lonely and isolated in college. And towards my last year, my senior year, I started making friends, and we were all on the verge of, I just made friends. We were all on the verge of moving away after finally finding my people. And so I was sort of, you know, an anxious embrace of the future. Like, you know, good things are coming. I found my friends, but also I'm scared of people moving away. And like the song Rapture especially is basically written exactly about my my college graduation, where it's like, you know, it feels like all my friends are being raptured away to these far away places for jobs and everything. And these friends I just made are now moving away from me. So that was sort of the development of that album.
Gotcha. Yeah, a lot of heavy subjects with Deathbed, Warm Glow, and then this You Were Never Loved EP, which that song in particular is about. You on your Bandcamp page, it says about religious trauma and social isolation.
Right. Yeah. That song. It sort of came from a dark place that I sort of written it a long time ago and never really finished it until I finally found the, you know, sort of the instrumental to pair with it. Really, it sort of dealt with like a long life of, I guess, sort of internalized thoughts, maybe things that were never said to me. No one in my family ever really said you were never loved to me, but it was sort of an internalized thing, being sort of feeling like the black sheep of the family in terms of, you know, I grew up in a Southern conservative Christian household. I realized I was an atheist probably when I was like 13 years old. All my friends and family knew it. And so they sort of, you know, they would go to church without me, and I would sort of get in my head, like, you know, what are they saying about me behind closed doors? You know, I'm all my other family members, you know, they're like these Southern good boys, and I'm like this emo atheist sort of outcast of the family. And I guess I sort of internalized thoughts and about what people might have thought about me, even though my logical side knows that it's probably not true, because I have a great relationship with most people in my family. Yeah. And I sort of internalized those thoughts for so long, and you know, it had a little bit of a trauma attached to it.
Yeah, you're trying to be true to yourself and your interest in who you are as a person, but like fighting against social expectations and stigmas. Precisely. Yeah. What led you to donate all proceeds from that to Trevor Project?
It just sort of comes down to, I guess, and you know this, in the last few years, like there's been just a huge attack on trans people and LGBTQ people in general. And I guess sort of me growing up with those sort of, you know, feeling isolated from the conservative Christian, you know, communities and family that I grew up in, I guess I sort of had a real like sensitivity to that sort of oppression coming from religious groups on LGBTQ people. And there are certainly plenty of people in my personal life who are queer identifying people that, you know, I felt like if there's any little bit of good I can do with art I could make, you know, then making a difference and donating to like a cause that helps crisis support services for queer youth is like an important thing to do. Yeah. How have you found, I mean, your music is on Bandcamp. I'm sure it's on other streaming sites too, but I'm only aware of you because of Bandcamp. I mean, which is like great, right? I go searching the black metal tags, I become a fan of your band, and then you have a wealth of records for me to listen to, and you keep releasing new stuff. What's
is there like a metal community that you have found or gained because of being on Bandcamp and like the benefit of just this platform that is free for you to share your art?
Yeah, absolutely. I've made some pretty good friends. Mostly it's like we sort of both climb our way up in sort of the Bandcamp tags, and then we reach out to each other on Instagram DMs. Jason from the band Breaths and Rose Neath, he was featured on Warm Glow. He's a guy that I've been friends with for years, just sharing musical ideas and thoughts and things like that. There's another band, Rat, I hope I'm saying that right, from India, another blackgaze band.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, another guy that I've been friends with for years, just sort of coming up in our own little tiny blackgaze underground community and reaching out to each other and just making sort of lasting friendships on the internet. It's a pretty cool feeling.
Well, you put out EP in May. What's the future look like? I mean, do you ever hope to like build out a live band and play this live, or is this just like something you enjoy doing and like the purity of this being a bedroom band, like, or studio band only, like that's where it's going to live and breathe?
And you asked the question of the decade. I've thought about it so many times, thought about how I could make this work, whether I'm getting a band or just going up on stage with a guitar and having a backing track with drums and bass. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say I don't want to say it's never going to happen, but it's not on my horizon currently. Yeah. Once I graduated college and I started my career and started my professional 9-to-5 job, that idea of, maybe doing like a little tour with the band sort of didn't go out the window, but it became less of a logistical possibility than when I was in college and I was more free to spend my time how I wanted. It's something I'm open to, but it's certainly not something on the horizon, but we'll see. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like the benefit of the way you release music is like you can have a job and career and have this creative side and this outlet that like still allows you to be an artist without sacrificing your job.
Exactly. And if I ever wanted to be a successful touring artist, I'm not sure blackgaze was the right way to go.
Right. Do you ever have people at work like ask you about your band and then you have to share it and they're like, what is this?
I actually don't tell most people in real life about it. There's a very small circle of like longtime friends, like my partner in crime in my new post-hardcore band. He knows about it. My long-term romantic partner knows about it. My dad knows about it. And there's maybe 2 or 3 friends from college who I just kind of told about, but they don't really know the whole story. I kind of just appreciate being able to be creative without the pressure of someone hearing something and thinking about maybe, I'm writing about them or things like that. Just sort of being creatively free without the fear of judgment.
Yeah, I get that. What are you currently writing for new music? I mean, you just put out this post-hardcore record. You put music out this year, but is there anything you're working on right now?
Man, there's always things that I'm working on. I've actually sort of been open about the fact that I've been taking a bit of a hiatus for the last few months. Really, it hasn't been since probably late 2020 after Nowhere Else Feels More Like Home came out that I like took a break. I released that album in like August of 2020, and then I said, okay, it's like I need to take a break from this. And then at the start of 2021, I started working on Deathbed, and since then, from Deathbed to I did a split called Funeral Flowers, and then I did Warm Glow. I did the Isleptonthemoon album. It's been like a nonstop, constant thing, and I feel like my creativity just needs a reset. So for like the last 5 or 6 months, I've been just sort of stepping away from it. There are every time I get like a little idea for Wounds or Isleptonthemoon, I put it down. So there are like a few demos that are like prepared for the next release, because I feel like I'm just going to always keep putting things out. But there's nothing on the near horizon, I'll say.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tune. And now I'm learning as I listen along, and the wheels are turning, and I started a song. One good word and I'm gone. Oh, as the story grows, the more I wanna know, the more I wanna show you. As the story grows, as the story grows. You can create something lasting and great, something passionate and real. And I'll bring in my own good feelings, I'll sing it with meaning. Let's just attack it and never look back. It's wild and fantastic. All together at full power, we're so much better. What's that word I'm missing? If you help me, I'll listen. What's that word I'm missing? Can you help me? I'll listen. As the story grows, the more I wanna know, the more I